Hi and welcome everyone. I'm Catherine Ewing from Emotional Freedom at Last, soon to be Sacred Heart Alchemy, and I am here with my friend and just always delightful. And it's always you have such a special place in my heart, my friend Duane. And I since I've known of Mal, for many years. I'd seen her name around, and we really just got to be friends a couple of years ago. And I just watched her come through some of the most challenging and amazing things, and I'm sure she will, talk about some of that and however much detail she wants to go in. But I have to say, when I was thinking of this idea just sort of popped into my head. Let's get on Blab and start having conversations with women, about our divine feminine power and birthing our divine feminine, because I think so many of us are in this place right now. Whatever the past has been, whatever our stories have been, whatever we've been through, we've come to this place where we know that it's our time to get on with our own healing, do whatever else needs to get done, and really anchor this energy of the divine feminine on the planet, not in separation from the divine masculine, but coming more into balance with the divine masculine, so that we really can have both of those energies fully grounded on the planet. And in my, way of thinking, create heaven on earth. I believe that balance has to come in order for us to have the kind of world that we want. And also, from my perspective, it can only come with men and women when we have balanced it within ourselves by doing the healing of the core wounds that so many of us carry. So that's really the mindset, the space, the energy, the consciousness that I'm bringing into this conversation and inviting other women into to have with me. And so, Mal, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, because you would do it so much better than I would do it. And then we'll just kind of let the conversation flow and just kind of be open with it. And hopefully some other women will join us. I see we do have some people watching, and perhaps some others will join us, and we'll really go into a deep and rich conversation here.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yay.
Well, my life's been a journey with a lot of challenges. I like to think of them more now as lessons, things that I needed to heal within myself, rather than I'm being a victim or punished in any way. That's not true. And it's not true for any of us. Life happens. And I met you, Catherine, and at that time I thought I had everything. I thought I was rocking it. I was arrogant, just, perfection. I knew it all. And a big cosmic 2x4 came along and hit me on the side of the head, baby, and knocked me flat. And so it was a very painful experience. It was betrayal in my marriage. It ripped my heart out. I believed that I was married to my soulmate, and we had a soul contract. That contract was broken. And that's another lesson in life, that things can happen. Was I a victim of something? No, but I had to look deeper into what needed to be healed in me as a lesson from this very painful experience. And what I discovered was that I needed to trust myself. I needed to trust my own intuition. When I felt something, if I felt it wasn't right, not to dismiss it. If I got a really deep gut feeling, to pay attention to it. And I think through most of my life, I've dismissed those warning signs.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for saying that, really right up front, because, well, there's so much in there, but the trust piece is so significant. As I see it, and as I've seen it, for women, perhaps throughout our whole lifetimes, where we have either been specifically told or just learned to turn down the volume on our own intuition, to not listen to those little moments of, maybe you should cross the street here. It's not because it doesn't feel right. Or maybe you should get out of this car. Or maybe, and we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. We don't want to seem like we're being judgmental or whatever it might happen to be. And we turn down the dial. And I have found this especially so because I work with so many women, or have worked with so many women over the years who have some kind of abuse in their background, whether it's sexual abuse, from within the family, incest, or whether it has been, sexual abuse outside of the family system, or there's been abandonment, or there's just been dysfunction in the home, where there's been alcohol or drugs, or parents have not been present because of their own addictions or emotional issues or physical. And what that does to women is we learn how to not trust ourselves. When we say to somebody, this happened to me, and they say, that couldn't have happened to you. You stop making things up, or Uncle Joe would never have done that. Or if you say that again, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Or, you're going to wash your mouth out with soap. Or don't you ever say that again. Do you know how much it would hurt Daddy if you said that about his brother? We get shut down, and we get told that what we're feeling is inaccurate, not the truth. And then we stop believing ourselves.
And that's what happened to me. Yeah. And I realized, I saw a path of it from a young child, that my feelings, my fears weren't acknowledged, and that set a pattern. So in many relationships I've had where there may not have been an element of really, there wasn't really good honesty, I would take it upon myself and say, oh, Mal, that's just you being weak. That's me being insecure. And I would dismiss things. And now when I look back on them, I was 99% right every single time.
Yeah.
And even in this most recent situation, I started to recognize when I got a really bad gut feeling, I was right. And not to let it go, but rather to ask for explanations and for honesty and accountability. Not saying I got it, because we know what the outcome was. I had to end the marriage. So, but I did it, I feel, with grace and with compassion. I'm very proud of the way that I have walked this path. It's not an easy one to walk.
Yeah, I mean, I have been, and I wasn't as up close and personal, certainly, as some people were with you as you went through this journey. But
you were pretty close with me. I remember you tapping away one night, girl.
Yeah, we definitely tapped
when I was really down in the dumps.
Yeah.
Oh, you were close.
Thank you for that remembering. But yeah, so I mean, I knew what you were going through, but it wasn't like a daily thing where we were talking or I was supporting you through it. It was more, periodic. But I was so struck with how graceful you were that sometimes I thought, oh, she just needs to get pissed off. Like, she's in denial about this, And, I remember having those thoughts to myself, because you really, and I think there was a period of time maybe when you did, maybe there was still some of that denial going on, or
it wasn't, this is important. It wasn't denial. I was clinging to hope.
Oh, okay.
Big difference. I was trying to
differentiate that. Yeah.
That little piece of hope that maybe I could fix this. Maybe there could be a good outcome. But the hope was just squeezed out of me.
So even as you say that, Mal, it almost sounds like the hope was somehow you still trying to figure out how to fix it, when clearly it wasn't your problem. I mean,
it wasn't my problem. And let's just say that bad choices continued, which took the hope out of my heart.
Yeah.
Squeezed the last ounce of it out of me, and that was it. I was done.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as you say that, it is also reflective of women, and perhaps you certainly handled it more gracefully, and maybe gave it more time, and hung in there,
3 years.
for quite some time trying to make this work. But don't most of us as women hold on to that hope. I see something in him. I know in his heart he's a good person, right? Let's just see if we can work on this. Maybe it's me, if I can do something differently, if and we hold on to things.
Yes.
Well, perhaps, although everything is divine timing, so maybe it isn't beyond the time we should have, but certainly, we do hold on, and we try to fix things, and we try to step into whatever responsibility we feel may be ours, maybe when that is misdirected. Maybe it's not our responsibility after all. Maybe our responsibility is to be true to ourselves and say, as much as I love you, as much as I would like this to be different, as much hope as I'm holding out here, when I'm honest with myself, I have to acknowledge that this is not in my highest good.
And I have a very deep spiritual practice. I meditate every day. So I feel that I was divinely guided through this. And I think I got to that point just at the right time. I don't know if it could have been any other way when I look back on it now. Probably not for me. I think I really honored myself in the process, honored what I was feeling. And then what I was very, very careful about was making any decisions from a place of weakness or anger. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make good decisions when I was feeling strong, centered, in touch with my divine feminine, and to move from that place and not from a place of being wounded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you spoke early on about making a choice not to feel like a victim.
Right.
So how do you do that? Like, let's just, you could very easily have been in the look what was done to me, mm-hmm. right?
Well,
victimized, whatever words you might use. So what is the practice specifically? And what would you say to other women was critical for you to allow you to not go down that rabbit hole of I'm a victim here?
I think
that's not an easy.
No, it's not. I think my long-term spiritual practice, my meditation, my journaling, and prayer really opened me up to a level of awareness about myself and the relationship that I was in and what was going to serve me, rather than feeling pain and feeling wounded. Now, at one point, early on in this, I probably felt a little victimized because I was blindsided. I didn't know that this was happening. So there was that period of time of adjustment, like, oh, wow, you get knocked off your feet, and your immediate response is, well, look what this person did to me. Mm-hmm. But I got out of that mindset very quickly, and I decided, wait a minute. I have spent 27 years in recovery doing a lot of work on myself, done a lot of reading, a lot of courses, a lot of modalities. I know better, and all that work that I've done for the past 27 years carried me through this and really showed me the way to walk this path in complete strength and confidence about what I was doing and the decisions I made.
Yeah. So you had a very strong awakening that allowed you to carry through.
Yes.
So you used the term soul contract. You thought you were in a relationship with your soulmate.
Yes.
Do you still think that?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to mean happily ever after, right?
And I'll tell you what I think it is. I think he was my soulmate. I think we do have a soul contract. And the contract was to heal something within one another. And I think it worked. I think that the relationship opened up something within my ex-husband that brought something to the forefront for him. That is something that he needs to heal and work on and to address. And I know it brought something for me, which was not trusting myself, not trusting my intuition, not trusting that higher guidance in certain situations. Now, sometimes, hands down, I would never even question it. But when it came to him, I did, which was always my pattern with men, that, oh, I'm a good woman. Why would they lie to me? Whoa, I'm trustworthy. Why would somebody not be trustworthy with me?
Yeah.
So, that, and so I learned my lesson here. And I think it really brought something out in both of us that we both needed to work on and deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for that piece, because, one of the things that I sometimes work with my clients on and often teach about is this idea of soul contract. And our soul mates are not necessarily the happy ever after story, right? The people who we have soul contracts with and who we have agreed to be in soul contract with, we have done that in order to help our soul grow, right? Toward the remembrance of who we are. And so those relationships can be some of our most challenging relationships. I remember years ago reading a book. It was called Courageous Souls. The name of it has since changed. But it was the first time that I really understood. There were 5 or 6 different psychics who had specialties in being able to see the Akashic records. And it was stories about people who had significant challenges in their lives, children with disabilities or terrible accidents or illnesses or relationships. And these psychics were able to see the conversation that went on a soul level, right? When the soul who was, quote, the one who had the experience, or the victim, was actually saying, for example, I want to, when I come back onto earth, I want to learn forgiveness, or I want to grow in grace, or trusting my connection to spirit. And so I need some of you souls in my soul family here to play these certain parts for me. Will you be the drunk driver who kills my son? Will you be the pipe bomber who puts that bomb in my mailbox and blows off my hand or my face, when I go? And there's actually like a negotiations that go on around in a boardroom, if you will, where souls from the same soul family agree to play certain parts, or not. They can say no. And some of them did. They said, I couldn't do that to you because I know on a human level how much that would hurt you. And so there are these negotiations that go on, and then we incarnate. Then we come into physical form, and we forget that we had those conversations. But we recognize someone on a soul level. I've had these kinds of relationships where it's like, oh, I've known you forever. We've never met, in our lives before, but I've known you forever. And then we do whatever it is that we came together to do. And what that said to me, and what I understood from that, is that there's no blame, there's no victim, there's no perpetrator, there's no blame, there's no guilt. We had a contract, and we are now playing out what we agreed to do on a soul level.
And you brought up a fabulous point. Forgiveness. I think that every single challenge that we go through in life, whether you're a man or a woman, part of that teaching is always going to be about forgiveness, because every time we learn something more about forgiveness, it brings us back to love, which is really what the whole concept of the Course of Miracles is, that we either live from love or we live from fear. So these lessons bring us back, and each time is to teach us a deeper part of forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't mean that you're going to let somebody else off the hook for bad behavior. The forgiveness is freeing yourself from that deep pain, learning to disconnect that so that you're not the victim. Because when you don't forgive, you live as a victim to that pain, to that perpetrator, to that incident that caused you such, difficulty. So I think every lesson we have is about forgiveness ultimately.
Yeah. And ultimately about self-love, because the forgiveness is really about self-love, because as you just said, you're freeing yourself of holding on to that old energy of anger or resentment or needing to get even, retribution, being right. And as we can let that go and come into our hearts, right, that then it's an act of self-love, which is, I'm Sacred Heart Alchemy, right? And it's all about the transformation through the heart. So I want to get back. I want to just close my door here for a moment because I'm in my office and someone just came in and I can hear them talking out there. It's a little distracting. So we're talking about birthing your feminine power, right? And as you were just describing this soul contract with your ex-husband and what you both learned from it, it just brought me back to this idea that part of coming into our feminine power is not just the female thing, right? It's also a balancing of it for men who perhaps have taken on the egoic male, some of these egoic male traits and qualities that are so out of balance. So I see this actually as a process for both of you. You said you stepped into your divine feminine, but if it's connecting him with his heart, if his own healing is about that, it's also connecting him to his divine feminine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting, a comment he made to me, and I think that this really applies to what you just said, was your crucifixion became my resurrection.
Whoa.
Yes. So when you think about that when somebody does something that they realize or own has crucified someone they love, but from that came their awakening and their resurrection as to what they were doing, that's definitely a balancing, of that divine feminine, divine male energies. I mean,
right. And the working out of the contract, of the agreement.
Yes.
Right. Clearly you came together to do this thing together that opened you up to your, trusting your inner guidance, your inner wisdom, that dial that had been turned down, and him balancing that masculine power, authority. He was a powerful, authoritative, well-respected, right? Professional.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps there was an abuse of that power there.
Yep.
So
it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked before a little earlier about how we as women very often turn down the dial and don't listen to our own intuition. And you mentioned that this has sort of been a pattern for you. You also mentioned that you've been in recovery for 27 years. So I don't feel like I'm pulling the blinds open on anything you haven't already said. Yeah. Can you share a little more about your story, if you will, your herstory, the things that you think may have set you up in a sense, for turning down that dial, for not trusting yourself, for putting other people's needs and opinions and desires before your own. Because in some ways you have also appeared to be a powerful woman, right? You had that persona. And you said that early on too. I was arrogant. I thought I was all that. I was in my stuff. Obviously, I'm beautiful. I'm well put together. you were a little intimidating to me when we first met, you know? And then I got to know you and I said, wow, that was I had a very different sense of her, even the alpha chick, like,
Yeah.
I got it, like, you know?
I
And
thought I had it.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so can you talk a little more about that development and kind of how that unfolded for you?
Well, my whole journey really went amok when I was very young. In my teens, I was 6 feet tall and I was just under 6 feet and weighed 100 pounds. So I was a kind of I'd say, freaky looking kid. And my friends would call me malnutrition, which made me feel completely worthless. So at a very early age, my best friend became Colt 45 malt liquor. I had
Mm-hmm.
my first blackout before the age of 18. And that alcohol gave me the courage to show up every day and try to be funny, try to fit in. It didn't work. It was a temporary Band-Aid that I held on to for 25 years, and I abused it terribly. My life really looked like a train wreck. Failed relationships, depression, um, just self-deprecation, absolutely no sense of self-worth. And it wasn't until I was 41 when I got into recovery that I really started to see that I was a very smart, beautiful, loving woman. But I never saw that when I looked in the mirror before.
Yeah,
But
at 14 or 15 years old, when you were awkward and lanky
and that vision just stayed with me because
yeah.
of the bullying. And I never saw my reflection in the mirror until I was about 41. I never saw the real me. And it
Yeah.
took getting sober to do that. And once I started that, then I became very interested in transformation and how much change we can really create in our lives. And I really got into it. And I've had many mentors, Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer, and many spiritual mentors. And all of these things just took me to another step of growth. It was like going up a ladder, another step, another rung, another rung. And I kept climbing forward in my consciousness, my awareness, my self-love, appreciation, gratitude for everything I had. And then I got to a level right after my book came out. And that's when I was feeling pretty arrogant again. I was like, wow, now look what I've done. Wrote a book, best-selling author now. Woo, whippy. And so another level, but I got a little confident, a little cocky. And then shortly after, a year after that book came out, I got hit with the cosmic 2x4 again, which I said, oh, here we go. Another lesson, another step on the ladder, another rung to climb. And I realized, I said, you know what? This whole experience is like a classroom. It's all it is. It's all lessons.
The
It's
school
not
hard.
impersonal, Mal. This is just a classroom. And you've had a few tough lessons, but guess what? You learned what you needed to learn in each one. Thank God, I did. I'm a good student, and I won't make the same mistakes anymore. That's the good part. I won't make the same mistakes. This last one,
Really hope for, right?
yeah, well, this last one I had repeated several times. I'm done. I won't repeat this mistake again. I will truly honor myself, my voice, my guidance, my intuition, in everything I do moving forward from this day forward for the rest of my life as long as I'm here. It's not another mistake I will ever make.
So let me back up for a little bit because I want to come back to this. So it was really your experience of being an awkward, skinny girl. There weren't, other family things before that were part of that, or it.
Well, I would say that my dad, at low moments in his life, I noticed he used alcohol. So I used alcohol. And I loved him dearly. He was a wonderful man.
Yeah.
He was a great dad to me. He couldn't do enough for me, but I did see at moments that he used alcohol in his life. So I said, well, if he uses that when he's feeling down, why shouldn't I? And I did.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Seeing
that
model.
Band-Aid was cast early on.
Mm-hmm. And in the years, you said 25 years, right?
Yes.
Really? So 15 or 16 to 41.
Mm-hmm. You can do the math.
Your life as a train wreck, and yet there was a level of outward success, correct?
There was. I hid my alcoholism pretty well, I'd say, to people watching me. Not everyone was aware that I had a problem. I showed up every day. I went to work. I was successful, not nearly as successful as I became, but I was successful. It's because I was a worker. I was smart. But once I really got, was sober, then I was unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I learned. I could really create anything I wanted. I am a manifester, Catherine. I will admit it. I love to create things, make things, do things, create new businesses. I'm 68 years old, and I'm now in the process of launching another career. I'm unstoppable.
So I would correct you and say 68 years young, first of all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't feel my age.
I mean, anti-aging thing,
I feel like a kid. I'm very energetic, very strong, good health. And, now I'm launching a career as an inspirational speaker.
Yeah, drawing from all of your own experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the message I have to share is I'm just a container for the words. So there's no ego in this now. This is just purpose. The words come through me. There's a message that the words are the gift that I've been given, and the words will heal those that are in suffering. But I'm only a container for the words.
Mm-hmm. So what are the words that are going to come through you right now? Because I'm not going to ask you, what you think they are, because I know that when you open your mouth, right, exactly the right thing will come out and spirit will flow through you. So I just want to invite you to share in speaking to, the women who may be listening to this and who might listen to it on recording, wherever they are in their own personal life journey, whether they're stuck where you were, however many years ago that was, 28, 30, 35, 40 years ago, or anywhere in between there, whether they're thinking they're all that and yet there's still something very wounded, very victimized within them that perhaps they're not quite ready to face, or whether they're kind of coming out the other side. What would the message from you be, or through you?
We are infinitely more powerful than anyone has ever taught us. But that magnificence, that shining light that's within us has been dimmed by the layers and the layers and the layers that we've picked up on the journey. All we have to do is just wipe the lens clean. All of it will come back. It will be restored beautifully, because no one can take away that beauty. And I'm going to get teary on this. That beauty, that love that is in our soul can never be touched by anyone else, only us. It's our gifts. We bring it forward. So if anyone's out there thinking that someone else has gotten a hold of this, no, they haven't taken it away. It's just been dimmed. All we need to do is just take the layers off that are dimming it. and we become fully restored as the divine feminines, goddesses, women that we are.
Mm-hmm. So you just breathe that in for a moment and let the truth of that settle, because what I would add to that is we are the only ones who can love ourselves free of any of those thoughts, ideas, concepts, beliefs that we may be holding, carrying.
We're the only ones that can love our hurts away.
Mm-hmm. My favorite book of the moment is called Whatever Arises, Love That. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's fairly new, by a man actually named Matt Kahn. And, again, it was one of those things that was divinely directed to me. It just sort of showed up in my life. And a lot of what he speaks about is, a lot of what I already sort of know and believe and work with. But he has a beautiful way of framing things in a slightly different perspective. And he said, whatever arises, whether it's an emotion or a circumstance, it's just some part of your innocence. And I might call it, an aspect of your wounded self or your inner child, really just showing up, asking to be loved, asking for the love that it didn't receive or didn't receive enough of as a child. And I was with a client this morning, and I was like, just imagine when your kids were little, or maybe even now, and you would take a phone call, and all of a sudden they're on, they're hanging on your leg, mommy, 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 mommy. It's like these little parts of yourself, because she was saying, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, or I know I should be over this by now. And I said, there's nothing to be over. If it's coming up for you, it means it's a part of you that's still wanting to be loved, so that it can relax, so they can know it's safe. And just as your kids will be, pulling on your pant leg when you answer the phone, because even if they're 2 rooms away, they get that you've turned your attention away from them. Mm-hmm. We do the same thing to ourselves when we deny our feelings. Yes. We turn our attention away, and then they become stronger and more insistent. I'm here, pay attention to me, right? Or maybe we become a little self-destructive, or whatever that might happen to be. So the paying attention, noticing whatever is coming up in that moment, and loving that is really how we love ourselves free into the place where you're finding yourself now at 68 years old, right?
I love that you bring up about the wounded child or the little girl inside of us. We need, as women, to give ourselves a big hug every day and say, you know what? Got nothing to worry about. I've got this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take good care of us today. This is handled. That's honoring that fearful child that can be in us, as you said, jumping up and down and screaming. We need to do that.
Or hiding in the corner, terrified. Or asking, is it okay to speak up? Is it safe to ask for what I want? Am I okay? Yeah. Right? Always scanning. We wonder why we're in our mind so much, because we're always scanning the environment. This is the job of the brain, right? Of the ego mind, the survival mode. Is it safe here? Am I safe here? Can I speak up? Can I ask for what I want? Am I loved? Will I be taken care of? Am I good enough? Right?
Got it.
All of that is under the surface. If you think of the iceberg and how much of it is under the surface, and that little tiny part that's above the waterline, right? That's really this part of our brain. The rest of it is all of that inner programming and patterning and subconscious belief system that's always running. It's like what's on your desktop is not everything that's on your computer. It's everything that's running behind the scenes, right? That slows things down, that makes it not work right, that allows us not to input the things we want to input or take a. It's the same thing with our patterning and our programming. And each time we love what arises, each time we recognize that something that's coming up, fear or shame or humiliation or a sense of rejection or just a desire to be seen and heard, because this is what I notice in my own life and with women, really, and men too. We just want to be seen and heard and accepted and appreciated. That's all. That's all. And so when we can do that for ourselves, it just settles a part of us down. It's like when our 2-year-old is having a tantrum. We don't start screaming. We just hold that child, or we sit with it until the tantrum is over, and then we say, "Are you feeling better now?" Right?
Yeah.
And the 2-year-old inside of us deserves the same loving attention and affection.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
And that space of moving into the divine feminine, nurturing. It's strange. I'm not sure if we're getting an echo all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed except the echo. But the intuition, the nurture, the compassion, the forgiveness, all those pieces that we've talked about are all aspects of the divine feminine.
Yes.
And then we balance that with the action taking, right? That's the container. The masculine is sort of the container, the structure, the part that drives us. And when that is healthy and secure, then it allows the divine feminine to move within that space, so that when we take action, it's from that place of inner knowing and inner trusting.
And I think a really important part of that too, Catherine, is that as women, when we take action, it is not to compete or to put ourselves in a situation where we're comparing with someone else or competing with someone else, but that we are creating in accordance with who we are and for our highest and best purpose when we move forward with action. Sometimes action can be detrimental if it's not coming from that higher conscious place that we all have. So action's wonderful, but it has to be the right type of action. That when you move yourself forward in situations and in challenges, it's got to be action that supports who you are at your core. Because action that's reactionary is very damaging. Action that is mindful and thoughtful takes you up another rung on that ladder that I talked about.
Right. And then again, turning up the dial on the intuition, on the inner knowing, on the guidance, and then moving forward from that place instead of letting the mind, which is generally operating from that survival mode or the fear, right, or the need to get ahead or compete or prove something, right, all that reactionary, as you said, when we act in that way, we exhaust ourselves.
We damage ourselves and we damage whoever we're interacting with.
Right? We're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to keep all the dishes spinning.
Yeah.
Rather than allowing the information to come through us and move through us, as you just so beautifully did, and then, now this is where I need to go, or this is what I have to do. I call it responding rather than reacting.
Right. It's mindful action.
So we are coming to the end of our time. So I would like to know a little more about you really stepping out as an inspirational speaker, what you've got kind of going on. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience or invite them to, how they can connect with you? We can put your website information here in the chat box.
It's malduanecoach.com or selflove.coach.
malduanecoach.com
or selflove.coach. And, I'm still doing
that .coach or
selflove.coach. There's a new extension now on the net.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I have selflove.coach and selfworth.coach. Those are key words for me.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm still working with women one-on-one and doing some group work, but I'm really grooming myself now to go to another level of conversation, and that is with a larger group of women, because I'm recognizing that the message I have is really for healing, and the best way to get that out there is to travel and to do larger groups. So I've been grooming that and shooting video for it and getting ready to do a demo at the national speakers for it. And so good things happening.
Yay.
Yeah, good things. I'm in a good place, Catherine.
Good. Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm good. I'm really okay.
Who would have known or would you have thought a year ago?
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah.
That this is what it would be right now.
Yep. You saw me, you know.
Well,
and I'm just really an example of what we can do as women. That's all I am. I'm an example of what we can do as a woman when we do get knocked down, when something devastating happens in our lives that is so excruciating and so painful that you feel like your chest just exploded. Guess what? You can pull it all back together. You can pull all those pieces back, wipe off the layers, the light comes through again, get up, and you can start again.
Yeah.
And I'm no different than any other woman.
I'm not sure why I'm getting an echo. I'm turning my volume down, but it doesn't seem to be making a difference. But one of the things that I have, sort of the analogies that I've used with my clients is, something called emotional alchemy. And I know someone else has that trademarked, so I want to be careful about using that language. But, it's when I was in undergraduate school as a sociology major, for a while there, was an archaeology major, right? So I feel like I have this connection with this idea of lovingly and carefully digging up the broken pieces of our lives.
Yes.
Dusting them off, telling the story, coming to understand them, but then not getting stuck in that story. Now using them to create a beautiful new mosaic or tapestry or image or collage, or, right? Something that takes the pieces of your life with now the understanding of why that particular thing happened or had to happen or showed up at that time, or why that person or that experience, and seeing the picture through a different lens.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Not to be stuck in the story, but to see how perfectly that story unfolded to bring us to exactly where we are.
And that's where I'm at. I understand now that the pieces aren't shattered. The pieces are all back together. The teacup is like glued all back together. It's whole. It can hold coffee or tea again. It's okay. It's good. Goes back up on the shelf and
stronger than before.
Yep.
And full of even richer treasures, right?
Yeah.
So, dear, I honor you and your story and your new unfolding and everything that has taken place.
Thank you.
To bring you to this beautiful point in your journey. And I'm delighted, as always, to spend time with you and listen to you and learn from you and see what my future holds as I watch you walking a few steps ahead of me.
Oh, I don't know about steps ahead of you. You're quite the lady. You're doing great work.
Just know that's how I hold you in my heart.
Namaste.
Love you, darling.
Love you too, girl.
Okay.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you on the circuit.
Yes.
And thanks to all of you for watching, for being part of this lab, our as my friend Sandra calls it, as we collaborate, right? Another feminine thing, we collaborate and have fun and touch hearts and hopefully change lives. So we'll sign off now. Mal Duane, Catherine Ewing, saying goodbye and thank you so much for spending your time with us. Bye now.